Hi team 3. So I'm sitting in my kitchen with Jill Smiley, and we have just looked at your presentation, and we'll be discussing it. And Jill has some really positive comments that she's excited about, and also some areas that you might want to think about as you do your revision over the next week. So in terms of positive, you have mentioned that they've successfully hit on a really high leverage opportunity around Symphony Splash.
Sure, just the sheer volume of people who were there and people who were hearing symphony music for the first time. I mean, that's a huge untapped market. I mean, it is tapped in that there are a lot of our subscribers and all of our attendants who are there, but there's so many people there. I mean, if I could get everybody who attends Splash to come to a concert, I'd have no problem ever, right? Because those are huge numbers. So certainly trying to reach them and get them into the theater would be a big plus for us.
All right. And so your clarification of the challenge seems good, the way you focused it. However, what Jill has pointed out is that they already have information booths, and it's questionable, although she does have some kind words about your brochure, she likes it, about whether the brochure is going to get that conversion. And do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, we do have, we don't design anything specifically for Splash in terms of a please come back, but we do have our season brochures, and we talk a lot about the product itself. There's only so much we can do in terms of the venue is large, and our primary focus is, number one, safety, number two, to try to collect donations. So I don't think a handout is the way to reach this market, and specifically not the 15 to 35 who are not going to pick up paper market. So I don't know what it is to reach that market, but I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's a question of how do we do it without using paper? Do we do it electronically, and what does that look like? And how do we get that message out when our message is donate, donate, donate? Right. And then come to a concert. So.
Okay, so you're trying to collect donations on the spot, and so a secondary message is come to a concert.
It is to come. I mean, is the concert enough to get people excited in the product? I hope so. I hope that they'll see it and think, oh, well, that's something that's accessible to me. It's not boring. It's not. It's worth my time to go explore the concert. And it's interesting in that we often crash our web host day of because we get so much traffic to that website. So maybe there's something we can do to lead that traffic through, and maybe it's an offer or something like that. But how do we do it? Maybe not necessarily on the spot, but how do we give them something to take home that will entice them to come back? Because we're assuming that you've seen the product on the barge at the Splash itself and liked it enough, which we hope you do, because it's people do come back year after year. So it's closing that gap to get them to come to the website, come to a concert.
Okay, thanks. So it sounds like the summary is great identification of the challenge, and perhaps some more development in terms of how you achieve that BHAG, that vision that you set out. That Jill's expressing some skepticism about the brochure, given that they already give out information, and given the demographic they're going out after, about the brochure being able to do that. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, team. Hi, Team 3. So you heard the feedback from Jill, and now I want to make a few comments from a process perspective. So the first thing I notice in your process is that you seem to have come to your final solution by the end of week 3. So in week 3, you had the idea for the pamphlet, and then we did some clarification at that stage in the discussion forum, and you then said, and then you iterated and made your focus and your problem statement on how to leverage Symphony Splash. But it's interesting because you had the pamphlet idea from the beginning, and I'd like you to think about how that sort of impacted going through. So as you heard from Jill, leveraging Splash, yes, great idea. In the sense that, of course, there's 40,000 people there. What can she do differently? And I want to look at how, what's interesting is it seems like you came to that idea in a really iterative way. You didn't come to the idea of leveraging Splash in week 3 when we were doing clarification. It seemed to come out of your exploring ideas, and I sort of identified it here under the marketing focus with the pamphlet. Then that then became a jumping off point for leveraging Splash. So in thinking about creative process, please think about, do you think that you could make the argument that iterative way of working, not focusing too early and then going back and forth, and sort of your focus for how to frame the problem emerged from your solution finding? I haven't looked back at this team's profiles, but I wonder whether you're all strong implementers on this team, going to the solution and then working backwards from there into the problem clarification. If so, that's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something to note about your style for creativity. So what I'd like to hear is in your paper that you'll be writing this week is an analysis of how exactly you came to your clarification. Your clarification was strong. How did you come to it? When I look at your process documents, what I see, let me just go back to the start. I can't seem to, oh, here it is. When I look at your process documents, I do see that in the earlier stages, you are less divergent than other teams. So other teams, if you look at their documents, you might see maybe 5 times the number of sticky notes in the early stages. You did do a good SWOT analysis, but there's another one here. These ones as well. It might be that you just didn't use Linoet, so that's fine too. And so I don't know if you necessarily were less divergent. However, if you were less divergent, it's not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'd like you to think about it. What did it mean to be less divergent in the early stages of the process, if in fact you were? Let's keep going. And why? Like, if you think about the systems model of people, what was about the people, leadership, environment, and process that came together, that in this team you had the specific experience you did. So then when it came to exploring ideas, you seem to have come to your solution fairly early. Now, as you heard from Jill, this is an assessing the situation issue. In terms of the assessment, she's saying, well, we already do something analogous. I agree with their clarification of the problem. We're not yet leveraging Splash to the degree we could be, but could we be, but I don't know if a pamphlet will solve our problem. So now if I look at let's see what your other ideas. Well, this is interesting. Where is your PPCO? Here it is. Give out fake tattoos. Symphony for Dummies. Have a booth at Splash, which they have already, right? And rework the show. So I wonder whether there's ideas that can come up here that would address her concerns, and maybe the giving out the fake tattoos sort of seems like one of those really creative ideas that needs to be massaged into something viable. But how would you, in a way, clearly they need something, and you said this yourself, that they need, I just want to find it. What you folks said in formulating the challenges, and I circled it, is something original is needed. So if something more original is needed than just a brochure, but perhaps not so, but perhaps more viable or will have a greater impact than the tattoo, what would that be? So that's your creative challenge for your revision. Now, let me look. I'm sorry, I didn't look at your criteria before I pressed record, so let me just look at this. Meet the budget, maintain the symphony's current values, level of idea innovation, ability to attract new customers, attract the 15 to, does it align? Okay. My question on your criteria would be whether ability to attract new customers and target the 15 to 35-year-old demographic, do they overlap? They might not, and if not, then explain that in the paper, but that will be my question going in. And my other question is around overlap between maintaining values and living up to the mission statement. So if you're measuring 2 distinct things, then great. Then that should be explained in the paper how they're distinct. But if there's overlap between them, then consider some tweaking. All right. So team, what I'm noticing in general, good clarification of the problem. How did you come to that clarification? Two would be the actual idea that you're putting forward still seems to need transformation and development, or possibly even other ideas coming into the mix to to address your problem statement. I would also ask the question whether you want to, you might not be married to that problem statement. In the paper that you write for me, you can completely change it. That's up to you. Now, you can, if you would like me to share your revised recommendation with Jill, then please do so. Then please write on your paper, I give permission for you to share a revised recommendation with Jill. Your primary responsibility is to your learning, not to the Victoria Symphony, so please feel no obligation to do that. All right, team, if you have any questions, let me know. I should also say that I did, based on Jill's feedback, I'm working on the assumption that perhaps you want to not stick with the pamphlet idea. That said, you could make the argument that the pamphlet idea is good, but it was either misunderstood or that there are concerns that can be addressed that you are going to address in your revision. So if you want to stick with that original idea, that's fine as well. I just need the argument for it in the paper. Please let me know if you have questions, and thank you.